University and Western Oregon University. The law states that the HECC shall review the plans for adequacy and feasibility with the governing board of each public university with a teacher education program, and after necessary revisions are made, shall adopt the plans. I also want to bring your attention to funding that has been dedicated for this work beginning in 2020 and expanded in 2021. The Educator Advancement Council has invested over $1.4 million in supporting implementation of the Educator Equity Plans, through which each university has received just over $230,000. HECC has distributed this funding to the institutions in support of development, implementation, and evaluation of evidence-based strategies and policies which improve conditions for the preparation and graduation of candidates. And there's a particular focus on racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse candidates. To that end, and in past plan review years, the university boards of trustees have reviewed the 2022-24 updated plans for adequacy and feasibility. And with that, I will hand over to my colleague who has collaborated really closely with the EAC and the HECC in guiding the institutions, giving feedback, and preparing these plans. Tony, if you would please introduce yourself to the Commission.
Thank you, Veronica. Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to join you this afternoon. My name, for the record, is Dr. Anthony Roselis. I'm the Executive Director of the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission. And also, just for a connection to the Higher Ed Coordinating Commission, is prior to my time at TSBC, I was the Vice President for Student and Personnel Services and Legal Counsel at Klamath Community College. So I've had some experience working and interacting with the Higher Ed Coordinating Commission, Veronica and Ben Cannon and all the wonderful staff there at the HECC. What I want to share with you this afternoon is first, just a minute about what TSBC's role is in this work. And then the second thing, what I really want to share with you are the recent efforts that we're making to try to help with our educator workforce, particularly the diversification of the workforce and retaining the workforce, because we know that any gains we make in recruiting or preparing diverse educators are often offset by retention. We lose a lot of our new teachers, and we particularly lose more. About 24% of our diverse educators will leave, about 24% greater than non-diverse educators. So it's a significant concern that we're addressing here with this, and we are happy to partner with HECC and the EAC on this project. The Teacher Standards and Practices Commission has the statutory charge of regulating and approving any program in the state of Oregon that wishes to prepare and recommend for licensure any of the public educators. So whether there's teachers, administrators, school psychologists, or counselors, or whatnot. So in addition to HECC approval, all of these individual programs in the units, and they're usually through the colleges of education at the individual universities, will submit for program approvals as well as unit approvals. Another piece of the statutory approval process is that they become nationally accredited. And we have 2 national accreditors that each of these teacher programs must meet the requirements for. And when we work with EPPs, we primarily focus on program level support, meaning that we monitor how well programs are aligned with the standards set forward by the TSBC regarding best practices in education, as well as assessment of performance. And in doing that work, we have a unique opportunity working with our partners to help innovate. And that's an important piece of this work, because if we are going to address a concern and a challenge that has been with us for decades now, the only way we're really going to do this is having to look outside the box. And we are doing some great work in the last few years. And now I'll transition to saying a few things that TSBC is doing that are related to these equity plans that you're going to hear from today, and I believe at your next meeting, and as well as some of the investments that we're making. So TSBC's efforts to diversify and retain a highly qualified educator workforce is primarily a two-pronged approach. One is we seek to increase access to educator preparation by reducing barriers. Examples of this would be our multiple measures approach, which allow EPPs to measure the performance of their candidates on content knowledge, as well as performance, not just through a standardized assessment. Another opportunity that has been wonderful for many of our candidates is that we've worked with the Educator Advancement Council to offer the Oregon Administrator Scholars Program. In the last about year and 4 months now since the program's been in place, we've provided just about $2 million in scholarships for diverse candidates who want to get into educational administration, so the principalship primarily. The other prong of our approach is, as I mentioned, innovation and trying to build up capacity for equity-infused programming at the teacher ed programs. We've done this through a few different approaches. One is our development of non-traditional pathways, which we hope our current EPPs, as well as future providers of teacher preparation, may be able to help increase the access and availability of teacher ed to many diverse candidates, second career learners, people who primarily will need to work while they're earning their licensure. And that has been a challenge in the past, where we've had fairly traditional programs, which many candidates have had to take time off of work in order to complete their programs. And we know the very people we seek to help diversify the workforce are likely going to need to have flexible programming to do this work. So you will probably hear from me back in another several months or so to talk about some opportunities for looking at credit and competency-based models, but that's for another day. And then lastly, one of the things we're doing is working with Dr. Dujan and HECC and the Educator Advancement Council in trying to build the capacity of those education preparation providers at the university level, as well as at the individual faculty level, to be able to infuse equity-based practices within the teacher preparation curriculum. And that's what we're talking about here. And that's what these equity plans hope to bring forth, is innovative ways to help our teacher prep faculty be prepared and to be able to support diverse teacher candidates, go out and recruit more candidates, and then to also consider ways that we can help those candidates as they get into their first few years of teaching, because teacher preparation doesn't and shouldn't end just when that person gets recommended for licensure. It should continue. So with that, I'll turn it back to Dr. Dujan, but we are proud sponsors in this work as well, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rosiles. And I would like to just recognize that I have been remiss in not recognizing the work that HECC staff member Erin Weeks-Ope has done in getting these, working very closely with the preparation programs and getting these reports ready. And with that, I would like to invite Amanda Katso from OSU. I believe you were next. If you would please introduce yourself and proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Technical question, can I share my screen?
Karen Lynn?
Yes, you sure can, Amanda. Do you know how? It's that up arrow.
I'm gonna try. We'll find out if this works. Can you see my slideshow?
Yes, that's wonderful.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amanda Casto. I am a faculty member at Southern Oregon University, and I'm very pleased to be here with all of you today to share some of the work that we are doing and the work that we plan to be doing for the next couple of years with the Educator Equity Plan. Just a brief background, I've been at SOU since 2019, and since then I've been involved in this work that we're doing. And I just recently have been tapped by Dr. John King to take over his work as the coordinator of this plan at SOU. So I'm very excited to be here with all of you and to share this, this work that we're doing. So just to give you a little bit of context of Southern Oregon University and what our culturally and linguistically diverse candidate population looks like in our EPP programs. We currently have just around 30% of our students who identify as culturally or linguistically diverse. So we are inching up towards, the same ratio as students in our classrooms. Not quite there yet, still have a lot of room to do. But with that being said, it's an improvement of where we're at as a state with the number of teachers who identify as culturally or linguistically diverse. And so I'm very proud of the work that we're doing to recruit new students and retain them in our programs through the Educator Equity Plan work that we're doing. So we have three main approaches to the work that we do at SOU for educator equity. And this is all to, recruit new students, retain them in our programs to see them to graduation, and as well as support them while they are attending Southern Oregon University. The first piece of our plan is focused on campus life. And so we have students who apply to become peer navigation coaches. These are upperclassmen students who specify in different programs and identify as culturally or linguistically diverse from underrepresented cultures. And they work with students who are in the same programs as them, or just happen to be assigned to them as a peer navigation coach to help support them at SOU. We currently have a couple different peer navigation coaches. We have 3 in total right now, and they support students in the Samoan Club, in the Native American Students Club, and ROTC. It really helps the students who come to SOU while they're in the classroom or outside of the classroom really develop a sense of belonging and community while they're doing their studies. Another thing that we are working on is with faculty, so looking at more so in the classroom, what are students experiencing when they're in the classroom at SOU. And so we have a culturally responsive teaching innovation community, and it takes the form in different ways, but faculty members come together to do research on best culturally responsive teaching practices, and looking at different articles, sharing best practices that we're using on campus, engaging in book studies on this topic to really look at what's happening in the classroom at SOU and what are some things that we can do to improve our classes so that they are more culturally responsive to the students that attend SOU. And last but not least, we are also looking at how we are reaching out to our tribal communities that are situated around SOU, both in Oregon and Northern California. And we have we have faculty that are working very closely with Native communities to share information about how to become leaders in education, and really trying to work to break down those barriers that have existed that have prevented so many students from seeking education when they really were wanting to or were needed in their communities to be educators. So with all that being said, some of our strategies for this upcoming 22-24 season is expanding our peer navigation coaches to having more students become coaches that can support students who come from Latinx populations, Native American populations, as well as the pre-education pathway. And what we're really hoping, and if I kind of jump down the slide a little bit, is to have a pre-education pathway that is working really closely with the tribal departments of education and supporting those Native students. We have several other peer-to-peer mentorship programs at SOU. We have a bridge program that is very successful. And so we hope to also partner with those other peer-to-peer programs to find out what they're doing that's working very well, generally or more specifically for underserved student populations, to help improve our piece as well with the educator preparation programs. We're also hoping to continue and expand the work that the culturally responsive teaching innovation community has been doing at SOU. Now that things are starting to open up a little bit more and campus is starting to become a little bit livelier again, really bringing more faculty in the fold. So it's not just education faculty or the different majors that go into education, but going far and wide so that as many faculty as possible are talking and self-evaluating about cultural responsiveness in their classrooms. And we really want to increase our focus with our colleagues in the STEM disciplines. We know that there is a significant need for STEM teachers of color in the state and across the nation. And so we're going to be very intentional about how we make our STEM programs that lead into STEM teaching preparation that much more diverse and inclusive. And we understand that part of that starts with our faculty, making sure that those classes are diverse and inclusive. And then last but not least is participating in the statewide community of practices, which I'm very excited about. The names that you see there are the individuals, both staff and faculty at SOU, that will be participating in the quarterly meetings, and then with others on campus at Southern Oregon University. And so that's going to be our leadership team that is really developing this community of practice. So we're learning about what are the things that we're doing well, where are the areas that we need to improve, and what are others doing that we can bring onto our campus and help us thrive. I think that is it for my presentation. I'm happy to take questions or wait, however you all want to do this, but I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Amanda. I think given that we have one more presentation and looking at the time, perhaps we check cross with your permission, perhaps we can have Western Oregon University present. Professor Girard, are you on? There you are.
I am here. Thank you so much for having me. So, Veronica, would you remind me, how much time would you like me to take here?
We originally thought about 15 minutes, but we would like to save some time for questions as well. So if you could be as close to 15 minutes, under if you can manage it, so we have some question and answer, that would be great.
You bet. I don't suppose you would allow me to share also. Is that possible?
You should be able to share, yes.
We need permission to share your screen. All right, maybe I'm having a local sharing issue. That's all right. I will wing it to the best of my ability. But my name is Mark Girard, and I serve as the Dean of the College of Education at Western Oregon University. So I want to tell you a little bit about the work that we're doing here at Western, but if you haven't had a chance to leaf through all of the full reports that will come to you, I hope you'll get a chance to do that. Each of these reports reflect careful work of our public universities in the state. And this work now, this is the fourth time that these reports have come for review by your group. And so I hope you can see over time that our campuses are making progress and are doing important work. and that over time, together we can ask and answer more challenging and more effective questions as we hope to build the educator workforce that matches with the cultural and linguistic assets that our children and families and communities need. Specifically, Western Oregon University is after two goals. One, we are after the preparation of increasing numbers of culturally and linguistically diverse future educators in ways that match the demographics of the children of our state. It's a pretty simple algebra problem. You know, we know that Oregon produces about 1,800 teachers a year. We know what our teacher retirement rates are. We know how our student population is changing over time. We can kind of map this out on the back of a napkin. And the truth of it is, we need to push in this direction, folks, for a decade or more in very significant ways. At the grossest level, I'll just run the algebra out for you just a little bit. At the grossest level, if 50% of the teachers that we prepared in the state of Oregon each year were culturally and linguistically diverse, and we did that for 12 consecutive years, we would arrive at a teaching workforce with the demographics that matches what our current students look like. We've got a ton of work to do. And so, yeah, I hope that you all will hold your public colleges and universities' feet to the fire in this regard, but also help us in some other ways. And I'll close this presentation with giving you 3 clear ways that you might be able to help us. The second clear goal that we have at Western Oregon University is about the preparation of particular kinds of educators, bilingual educators and special educators in particular. So we track those numbers, the way we recruit, admit, retain over time, and ultimately graduate culturally and linguistically diverse students, bilingual educators, and special educators. So those are kind of our targets. At Western Oregon University, the first 3 rounds of this work, we studied our kind of local climate. And we've learned that we have a lot of positive assets on our campus that are contributing to our success in this area. We are moving the needle slowly, but we're not moving it rapidly enough. But some of these sort of contextual things are, you know, our public commitment to becoming the first public Hispanic serving institution in the state of Oregon. That's helping us. We have a lot of momentum associated with work in that area. We are now in our 7th year of our Bilingual Teacher Scholars Program, which is a partnership, grow your own project with about 14 school districts in the state, where they identify high-flying young people and they come to our campus in kind of a shared custody situation. And those students complete our same high-quality teacher preparation program, funded both with Western Oregon University grant dollars and a commitment from their sponsoring school district each year. And then those students go back and change the world by becoming teachers in their local schools and communities. So that project is now in its 7th year and is producing increasingly large numbers of students each year. We've got an interim president of our campus also committed to an additional 80 scholarships in this area, and that has allowed us to expand our Bilingual Teacher Scholars Program into also serving what we're calling kind of a diverse teacher scholars pool. We got a lot of feedback from some of our school district partners in the state that said, hey, thank you, Western Oregon University, for helping us develop bilingual educators and Latinx educators. But we want you to also get involved in spaces to help us produce and support future Black educators. And so we've opened other scholarship pathways to be supportive in those spaces. So specifically, our work has been focused in three areas. Things that we're doing to increase access to our educator programs, We have really doubled down on building robust 2+2 transfer pathways in education with now 12 of the 17 Oregon community colleges. So what that means is our goal is to be able to work with anybody who can, spend their first 2 years at their local community college and then transfer seamlessly to educator programs at Western. That's been really important, and the groundwork that HECC did with the major transfer maps, that was really important, and our pathways are built on that work. In addition to access, we're opening up programs for working adults, program delivery on evenings, weekends, Saturdays, things like that. We're also moving programming down to the undergraduate level, as we believe that that is an access, but also an affordability issue. So now we're bridging over into kind of affordability. Affordability is the second major category. We've been able to route lots of scholarship funding into affordability, moving programming down to the undergraduate level. And frankly, we're also doing kind of negotiated rates programming with school districts around the state too. If you want to, Salem-Keizer, for instance, is in their 6th cohort with us in a Grow Your Own special education program where we're delivering our SPED program specifically to Salem-Keizer future educators, working with their paraprofessionals, transitioning into licensed educator positions. And we're doing that at a 50% discount in graduated at graduate level programming. So again, Western Oregon University is all in on this work, and we're looking for ways to do this more effectively. The third area that we're really working in is around retention. This last year, we were able to braid money from several different sources, and we conducted right at 100 listening sessions with students that are currently enrolled with us, transfer students, rural partners, paraprofessionals looking to access educator programs at Western. We really wanted to try to understand the student experience, the kinds of things that contributed to and the kinds of things that got in the way of admission, retention, smooth matriculation over time. And from that, we've developed a whole list of things that we're trying to build around students, things first to provide a more supportive context, things that we're also trying to eliminate as barriers from these pathways. So trying to understand the student experience. Our students told us they really wanted to see us working in spaces associated with becoming a more anti-racist university, a more anti-racist set of educator programs and pathways. So we've really tried to showcase the work we're doing there, such that we established the Center for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion within the College of Education. And that is an office that mirrors our new cabinet level position on our campus, which is kind of a diversity and inclusion officer that will sit at the cabinet level on our campus. So again, these things are all important and a part of our system. We believe our job now is to continue to double down on this work, continue to study the experiences of our students, study the ability of our programs to create accessible pathways to folks in these areas, and then also to be the very best partner to school districts, education service districts, state agencies, and our community colleges in educator workforce development. So those are our goals. I want to give you 3 quick things that I think the Higher Education Coordinating Commission can help us in this area. As we know, there's a ton of money right now on the table in education, and that's fabulous. The Student Success Act, $1 billion a year, fabulous. That money almost exclusively flows to the K through 12 side of the house, and that's fabulous. I've had this conversation with Senator Arnie Roblin, who you probably know was the architect of that work, and I said to him, Senator Roblin, did we get it right on day one? He said, of course we didn't get it right. Now it's our job to evolve the Student Success Act over time to help kind of push the money around into slightly different places, to do things like give your public universities a stream of kind of capacity dollars, stable capacity dollars that allow us to build capacities to do this work well. As long as these monies are kind of flowing with the biennium over time, it's very difficult for us to build the capacity that we need to be successful. Again, this is a long game. Growing a workforce is a long game, and we can't do that if we're having these starts and stops all the time. So trying to work to continue to evolve the Student Success Act, that's going to be really critical. Similarly, there's a lot of good money on the table around these grow your own partnerships and money flowing out of the Educator Advancement Council and the Oregon Department of Education. These are all positive things, and I would encourage us to study the effectiveness of the grow your own programming, double down on things that work, and discontinue the things that don't work. We need to be courageous here. Two very specific things. We could, I believe this is within our authority, and I've shared these things in a letter with Director Ben Cannon. I'm sure Ben, if he is able here, would chime in. Ben gave me a very thoughtful response in return, and I really appreciated that. But two additional things. The student success and completion model is one of the ways in which public universities are funded right now in the state of Oregon. I think, what is it? I think 40% of the higher ed funding, or maybe it's up to 60% now, comes from the student success and completion model. And there are bumps in that model for universities who prepare engineers or doctors, people like that. There's also a bump in the student success and completion model for bilingual educators, and that's a good thing. So that has signaled to my campus, for instance, that, hey, we should double down on the preparation of future bilingual educators. And the state is even going to compensate us a little bit differently for successes in that area. If we really wanted to do this well, we would provide that bump for all educators. We would provide an SSCM bump for all educators. That's something that we could do, we could choose to do, and it would be an effective way to increase, to help build the educator workforce that we need in Oregon. The second thing that I'll leave you with is one of the challenges that we have is who is eligible for different kinds of money. For example, Oregon Promise is this very successful scholarship program that we have that gives essentially free community college tuition for Oregon high school students, and that's very positive. Think about this for future educators. You can access Oregon Promise dollars in years 1 and 2. And then you can access Oregon Teacher Scholars dollars that Tony described to you previously in years 3 and 4. Those are $10,000 scholarships in years 3 and 4. Very positive. So together it builds a pathway into the teaching profession for Oregonians. Very positive. Working adults, though, like the 4,000 paraprofessionals that are working in our schools and classrooms just in Polk, Marion, and Yamhill County school districts, 4,000 of them. That population of educators are 2 times more culturally and linguistically diverse than than licensed educators in this region right here in the Mid-Willamette Valley. This is the region that I study. They are not eligible to access Oregon Promise dollars because they're not coming right out of high school. But that seems like a very simple policy shift, that if we just said, hey, if you're a working paraprofessional sponsored by your local school district, you bet we'll make precious Oregon dollars available to you through the Oregon Promise Scholarship strategy to help you knock out years 1 and 2 at your local community college. Then you can access Oregon Teacher Scholars dollars in years 3 and 4. Just that would really be helpful, a helpful innovation in our state to get us who we need. So those are some of the kinds of things that I think we could continue to do, but I would be happy to answer questions or share with you in other ways around this important work that we're trying to do.
Thank you. And Veronica, do you want to take questions?
Yes, I'm happy to take questions, or if they would be more appropriately directed at Amanda Casto from SOU or Mark Girard from Western, of course, these are welcome as well.
Any questions from the commission members? No. Commissioner Ray.
Veronica, thank you. Veronica, I just wonder how this program is similar to other states and where we see there's either greater, if there are places where we see there's even greater progress. The pathway does sound very long, and that we absolutely have to stay committed long term and look for new avenues. And I'm wondering what the best practices are in this area.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Rowe. I cannot comment conclusively or decisively about what other states are doing or how we compare. I do know, for example, when we were at the WICHE conference, the Forum conference last month in Portland, there was a lot of discussion in the Western states about how to do recruitment of students into the public institutions particularly, but the need to increase the diversity of candidates, student candidates coming through, and education was one of these areas that there was interest in. So I can say that others have been asking me when I am meeting with colleagues from other states, there is a lot of interest with what we're doing with the Educator Advancement Council, particularly the Racial Justice Council that the governor had established. So some states do look to us about what we're doing. So I do know there's that interest, but I cannot comment about how well we're comparing to other states, especially since we're so early in any opportunity to measure the outcomes.
Right.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Edwards.
Kind of two questions. First of all, Veronica or anyone, can direct my attention to the top level metrics for this, because I'm just struggling to sort of hold it enough in my kind of mind to be able to just know what the kind of key metrics are that are being standardized across everyone. Because at the moment it's sort of like just feel it. I know it's there. I just don't want it. I just don't know what it is in my head. So if you could direct my attention to that. And there was a question for Amanda around this. What's special about Southern Oregon? What are the special challenges that you have that nobody else has?
I will begin just briefly about the matrix that you are asking for greater clarity, for coherence, for you to understand that one. We worked very closely with the Educator Advancement Council and the development of that matrix. And if Erin Weeks-Ope is on the call, she has greater in-depth insight about the evolution of that matrix and how it's being used. Erin, are you on?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So did you say metrics or matrix?
The metrics. What I'm after is to know exactly where to go so I can see the metrics for this whole area without having to kind of ask Ben or dig around in detail. It seems like one of those things that'd be nice to, there's so much information we have. Yeah. This is that I just want to have like on hand. So it might be something that can follow up in an email, but just I would kind of want to like put it on my desktop, you know, so I've got it. So yes. I know it is. Because it's just hard to navigate just so much going on in so many different places and people have different priorities, which is why I asked Amanda about what's special about Southern Oregon, because I just wanted to get a fine tune on that.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Edwards. Mark entered in the chat and my answer would be the same, that every other year, the Educator Advancement Council produces a report, and Veronica is on the advisory board for that report. It's called the Educator Equity Report. So our North Star and our statewide measurement and investigation of best practices is in that report. That's been produced since 2016, every year until 2020. And in 2020, it began to be produced every other year, since the change doesn't occur in a large way every year. So in the fall, we'll have that report coming out, and maybe that would be something that would be good to bring to your attention in the fall with a presentation.
I hope you understand what I'm asking, which is just like, how do I, you know, how do we get some of these top line things. It's just that there's just a lot of stuff to pay attention to in the world, and this is one of those things. It'd be just nice to know how to get to it quickly.
Right. I'll put the link in the chat, and if it doesn't answer your questions, please reach out and we'll find some more information.
Great, thanks.
And these reports, Commissioner, also produce the data for these reports come through the HECC. We supply the data for these reports, and we do collect information on unemployment and retention of educators of color. So it might be possible in terms of bringing to you in very brief form elements of that final educator report that is more digestible than the array of information that appears in various locations.
I think you're reading my mind, Veronica.
Okay. Amanda, I believe you had a question directed at you about SOU.
Sure. And thank you so much, Commissioner Edwards, for your question. It's in terms of what makes us special comparatively, I don't know how to answer that, but what I can tell you is that one special aspect of our educator pathway program that we have at SOU is we have satellite programs that support students and in a lot of ways are non-traditional teacher candidates everywhere from Coos Bay to Lakeview. And so with our satellite program, we are able to support many linguistically and culturally diverse students across the whole region of Southern Oregon and support them in ways where they are still able to stay in their home communities and take classes and continue to work as, paraprofessionals or EAs in their home districts and continue to get their, teaching degree and license through SOU. We have amazing partnerships with KCC and SWAC and recruiting students and making sure that they're set up for success right from the get-go. And so that's one thing that I didn't get a chance to highlight, but it's an integral part of our education pathway program.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any last questions? And then we'll move to a vote. Okay, I think we're ready. And because this is an action item, we're approving the educator equity plans for SOU and WOU. What's somebody willing to offer that motion?
Commissioner Cross, if I may just observe that there are some formatting, minor formatting changes the staff will be working with SOU on. So the report for SOU will be more in alignment with the others. Just noting that as you take a vote.
Okay, so our vote is really about approving the content, not necessarily the formatting.
So moved. This is Vanessa.
Vanessa moves.
Aislinn seconds.
Aislinn seconds. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you for your reporting out and the good work that is going on around the state. This is really encouraging.
Thank you.
All right, the last item on our agenda is the Credentials That Work report. Clay Martin and Kelly Zinke, are you available? There you are. Hello.
Yes,
and
hello. Thank you, Chair Cross.
Whoever is sharing their screen on the last report, can you take your screen share down? I don't know who that is.
It looks like Sandy may be inadvertently sharing. Sometimes that happens.
Okay, since I don't know how I shared, oh, there's an X, stop sharing. Is that it?
Cool, that's it. Thank you.
I apologize.
That's all right.
Was there anything interesting on there? I hope it was all hack material.
It was material. Take it away, Clay.
All right. Thank you, Chair Cross, Vice Chair Rowe, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Kelly Zink. I'm the Education Team Research Analyst in the HECC Office of Community Colleges and Workforce Development. And I'll let Clay introduce himself.
And I'm Clay Martin. I'm the WTDB Initiatives Analyst in the HECC Office of Workforce Investments. And we're happy to provide the Commission with this update on the work that's happening around credentials that work. So on the next slide, you can see that it all started with the Adult Learner Advisory Committee. The ALEC, as we called it, was a joint HECC and Workforce and Talent Development Board committee, and it was co-chaired by Chair Cross, and who was representing the HECC, and Sherry Dunn, who was representing the Workforce and Talent Development Board. It included representatives from business, a variety of post-secondary education perspectives, including student perspectives and workforce development. The ALEC formed in part as a response to Oregon's new, at that time, new adult attainment goal that was developed in 2018. This goal was separate from the 40-40-20 goal and focused on adult Oregonians. The goal itself states that Oregon anticipates more than 120,000 additional jobs requiring post-secondary training and education between now and 2030. In order to meet this need, 300,000 additional adult Oregonians should earn a new degree, certificate, or credential valued in the workforce during that time. Because Oregon has substantial attainment gaps among minority, low-income, and rural Oregonians, the state will also commit to reducing those attainment gaps by half during the decade. So the ALEC spent a number of months discussing a variety of issues related to the achievement of that goal. And some of the things that they discussed were sort of recognizing that adult Oregonians represent a significant portion of post-secondary student population, in some cases the majority of the post-secondary student population. It recognized that adult learners have unique barriers where most must work and go to school or have additional struggles that are much more significant than your traditional college students, such as childcare, transportation, and others. And also, the ALEC recognized that post-secondary institutions were not uniformly ready to be successful serving adult learners, having been focused primarily on sort of traditional pipeline students up until that time. The ALEC completed their work and published a final report in October 2021, and that's available on both the HECC and WTDB websites. A part of the final report described early efforts to identify credentials of value. These were since branded credentials that work, emphasizing the close connection of the credential to a job. The intent was to provide a resource to working Oregonians to identify short-term, high-value credentials with a rapid connection to employment. Next slide.
And the work continues. So in 2020, Oregon was selected to be a part of a cohort of 4 states, plus the District of Columbia, to participate in the Advancing Post-Secondary CTE Data Quality Initiative, or the PDI. And the main goals of the PDI were to identify strategies and recommendations that states can use to improve the data quality, literacy, and use of CTE data, and then also develop the capacity of state and local leaders to improve their CTE data system and to better meet the needs of post-secondary learners. So at the beginning of this project, the interagency PDI team completed a needs assessment and then developed a 2-year action plan that had 4 buckets of work. And one of those buckets of work or areas of focus is related to the credentials of value or credentials that work. So it was identifying metrics and measuring how they contribute to student outcomes and align with labor market demand. So as part of the PDI project, Clay and I updated the Credentials that Work analysis. So we took a fresh list of all of the CTE programs offered at Oregon community colleges as of August 2021 when we started this work. And then we worked with the employment department to update the employment data, like wage and demand, employment projections, and self-sufficiency wages. And then lastly, we added a regional element to the analysis. So we used a county self-sufficiency wage for that particular community college. And then we also kept the community college identifier with each of the programs that were offered.
So the Credentials at Work methodology has its foundation in the National Skills Coalition's work defining quality non-degree credentials. They've spent a great deal of time evaluating models across the country and doing policy research on non-degree credentials and working with the National Skills Coalition. And as Kelly identified, the Employment Department, we developed a methodology for Credentials that Work using community college programs of study. This is just a sample to develop the methodology, and the intent would be potentially to expand beyond community colleges, but it was a good population where we had good data to use to work out the methodology. So the methodology itself, briefly, includes wage. We took the median wage for each occupation as provided by the Employment Department and divided it by a self-sufficiency wage. And so the self-sufficiency wage is one that was identified by researchers at the University of Washington who produce a self-sufficiency report for a number of states, including Oregon. In the past, this had been a sort of a small side project for one of the local workforce investment boards, but the state Workforce and Talent Development Board took on this work and produced the first self-sufficiency report recently, and will continue to produce them into the future. The idea around comparing it to self-sufficiency wage was just to recognize that that wage by itself doesn't tell a full story, that there are, in many cases, cost of living issues that are important to consider in order to recognize the value of a particular credential. Demand, this is something where we took data directly from the Employment Department. And I'll just back up and say all of the programs of study were crosswalked from the program of study and the zip code to the occupation by the Oregon Employment Department research staff. And so we used their factors for demand, including long-term demand, recent demand, and total openings. Education, the Employment Department provided competitive entry-level education and competitive level education for all of the occupations that we looked at. And so we created a methodology to reward credentials that were closer to a job. So in other words, if the credential itself was competitive education for a particular occupation, then that would receive a higher score than if there was a need to, say, go from a certificate to an associate's to a bachelor's in order to connect to a job. And sort of a more extreme example is, occupations such as a post-secondary educator requiring an advanced degree. A certificate doesn't have much value for that particular occupation. And so we created a factor to try to account for that, the relative closeness of the credential to a job. Competency-based, this is one where we assumed that all of the programs that we evaluated were competency-based because of the approval process that the community college programs go through. And then I'll just jump over and say portability is one that we wanted to consider, but we weren't able to get to it, and it's still something that we'd like to look at in the future. And I'll let Kelly describe stackability.
Yeah, and then last on this list is stackability. So a credential was considered stackable if it is wholly contained within a higher level program. So for example, a career pathways certificate of completion was considered stackable if it was wholly contained within a higher level program like an associate, an AAS. And then as part of your materials, you received a table of the top 100 occupations as the results from the Credentials at Work analysis. And these occupations are sorted first, or this list is sorted first by occupation, then sorted by community college, and then sorted by total score, high to low. And programs from all of the 17 community colleges in Oregon are represented in this list of top 100 occupations. We chose to present the Credentials at Work as a list of occupations because programs often include multiple credentials at various levels. So for example, a one-year certificate, a career pathways certificate of completion, an associate's degree, etc. And since all of these credentials fall under the same program classification code or SIP code, they crosswalk to the same occupation code. So they are associated with the same occupation. And the top scoring occupation is actually listed on page 19. It is the first line supervisors of mechanics, installers, and repairers. And there are actually 3 credentials that are offered at Blue Mountain Community College that are associated with this occupation. There are 2 statewide certificates of completion. There's a statewide career pathway certificate of completion. And these 3 certificates range from 12 to 60 credits.
And not surprising, you can see here the top 100 occupations cover a broad spectrum of industries and areas of work. And not surprising, the trades are part of the top 100 occupations. I'm including here things like automotive and equipment mechanics as well, and service technicians, as well as your traditional trades, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, etc. And those figured prominently on the top 100. The healthcare also makes the list, of course, with a number of occupations, including EMTs, nursing, medical and dental assistants and techs, a variety of different occupations, physical therapy, etc. Manufacturing makes the list with machinists and CNC operators and others. And all 3 of these are part of the governor's Future Ready Oregon initiative that is just beginning after the recent legislative session. So these industries are of critical importance economically to Oregon, and as a result, a number of the occupations represented in these industries you would figure would figure prominently within a top 100 of credentials that work. There was sort of, in terms of being able to sort of work with the data initially and see the results come out for the first time, one of the things that was very surprising to me was public safety's prominence. But then after having seen it, it does make sense, because these are occupations that that typically have shorter training windows, and they are certainly occupations that have high wages and high demand. So police and sheriff patrol officers, firefighters, fire inspectors, forest fire prevention specialists, and others. A surprising one that didn't have as many as we thought initially was IT. And one of the things that IT does have a presence on the list, of course, but one of the things that we recognized was that a number of occupations in IT require a bachelor's degree as competitive education. And so certificate programs, while gaining in recognition and importance and marketability, have not necessarily shown up in the market as high value, and the bachelor's degree continues to be a significant credential in the IT market. So those are the occupations, kind of a high level summary, and you have the list in your packet. So next slide.
So what's next for the credentials that work? As Clay mentioned earlier, we want to determine how to measure the portability element. We want to add that to the methodology and add it to the analysis and the scoring. Second would be to generate a list of those who completed the credentials that work, and then get wage data from the employment department and see how the actual earnings compare to the reference wage for the occupation and for the county self-sufficiency wage. And then third, we've drafted a policy option package that would promote the credentials that work results to Oregonians via the Oregon Career Information System, or CIS. The CIS contains Oregon-specific information on things like financial aid and scholarships, self-employment, occupations, apprenticeships, and post-secondary schools, and was built to remove barriers so that Oregonians can create accurate and actionable career and education plans. So not only would this policy option package fund open access to the CIS for all Oregonians, it would also allow for an annual update of the credentials that work analysis, because the list of CTE programs offered at community colleges changes frequently, and less frequently, but still updated on a regular basis, are wage and employment data. And then the draft policy option package would also support the ongoing evaluation and continuous improvement of the CIS. So you can see a picture here is a proposed landing page for the credentials that work data with 3 different ways to access the information. It's small, but kind of the first picture on the bottom there would be geared towards someone who knows the occupation that they want to go into and wants to explore more information about it. Perhaps job openings around the state, or more details about what the occupation entails. The middle picture would be geared towards someone who doesn't exactly know which occupation they want to pursue. So perhaps they want to explore the list of top 100 occupations in the state, so they can see maybe some of the occupations that they want to pursue and the paths they want to go down. And then the third picture would be geared towards someone who is located in a specific geographic area and wants to stay there. So for example, someone located in the Blue Mountain Community College District and wants to stay there, they could then use this avenue to explore the occupations that are available in their area. And this concludes our presentation. So thank you for your time, and we would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions for our presenters? I'm glad to see that you're continuing this work, and the methodology looks like you've enhanced it well beyond where it was with the Adult Learning Advisory Committee. Any thoughts or questions? Your connection with Future Ready Oregon. Tell us just a little bit about how you envision the connection.
Well, one of the things that we would expect is that there's a couple of ways. One is that the focus areas of construction, manufacturing, and IT, so I'm confusing myself because Future Ready includes construction for youth pre-apprenticeship, but doesn't include for adult work. But anyway, those focus areas, as people are implementing programs related to those focus areas, we will be encouraging credentials within those focus areas that are aligned with the credentials that work. And so there's some connection. It'll be a resource to those programs and grantees who are awarded funds. The second way that it will have an impact is that there's another piece to Future Ready called Industry Consortia, and these are three efforts that are similar but in different industries to stand up state level consortia that will help guide education and training and other issues related to those industries. And in those instances, the credentials that work that are related to those industries will figure prominently in, I would imagine, in discussions around the next steps for how to improve education related to that industry.
Right. Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions? Frank, Commissioner Goulard.
Thank you, Terry, Commissioner Cross. Good to see everybody. Kelly, good to see you again. Clay, I had a question for you. So the students that earn these credentials and get placed in good paying jobs, etc., do you also have a program, which I envision is the next step, a bridge to the next level? You mentioned, for example, well, I'll look at the bottom of the list, the airline pilots. You know, you have a credential to get them partway there and they're in the business, but is there a way other than elbow grease to get higher up that we and the state of Oregon or your program can inform them, educate them, train them so that they can achieve that next career advancement and progress in that career rather than get stuck at, stuck isn't the right word, but stay at that, I'll say, entry-level job?
Well, I can start and others might jump in and provide more information. First and foremost, within the credentials that work, there are stackable credentials where we will show the ability to move from one to the next. And that information can be provided in sort of our final form of presenting this as a resource to Oregonians. So that's one thing. And then, of course, there's significant work that's underway and additional work that will be underway related to career pathways. That's also a part of the Future Ready umbrella. And community colleges are already engaged in that. And so that work will help to emphasize and communicate next steps that may go beyond credentials that work. And then one of the things that we had talked about, but we're not there yet, was to look at additional lists of credentials with different focuses. So this is primarily targeted at sort of adult learners who need sort of a rapid return, but there can be other lists that we would produce that might be more focused on career growth and pathways to additional jobs There may be other lists that focus on social welfare jobs that that are very important to the economy, or rather very important to Oregon, but maybe don't pay so well. So they might not show up on the credentials that work as high, but yet they're very important to Oregonians. And how can we help promote and support those folks? So there are a number of different additional methodologies that we could come up with to help continue to provide additional resources to Oregonians.
Thanks, Clay and Kelly. And I imagine too, and you don't need to respond, but just a comment. And I know you're looking from 0 to 10 years out, but the good old futurists are always looking ahead. You know, what about 2040? It's fine if you're employed through 2030 in this hot new field of psychoceramics, but psychoceramics no longer exists after 2030. Oh my goodness, now what do I do? So if those credentials, first to have those potential 2040, the flying cars and all that in the back of your mind or front of your mind, but also if some of the credentials can transfer to other credentials in the year 2035, 2040, if needed. So thanks, that's just a comment. Thank you.
Commissioner Hammond.
Thanks, Chair Cross. And as a follow-up on Commissioner Gillard's question, I'm excited to see that I think this is something we sometimes take for granted, but I'm really glad that you emphasize the stackable quality of each one of these certificates. And I think you did talk about how we're going to sort of track participants to watch to see how it affects their employment and their wage and things like that. Do we have the capacity to, or were you thinking about, again, related to Commissioner Gerard's question, whether or not students actually take advantage of the next level of education over time? And I just think it'd be nice to know if the stackability actually pays off.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, I don't know.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That would be a really interesting element to add to the analysis. I will make a note to that, and I think that would definitely add to the continuation of that stackability element for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your report and this work. It's great. Any last questions for Clay or Kelly? And hearing none, I think it brings us to the time conclusion of our meeting. Is there any further business to bring before the commission? Hearing none, I'll declare us adjourned. See you all next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Cross and everyone.
Thank you.